Hey guys, welcome to our weekly news show here on Backstage with Millionaires. I'm Caleb, your host, and today we're going to be talking about the 30% market share cap that's being put on some UPI players, the regulation and inevitable censorship of OTT platforms here in India, BigBasket's big security breach, Tata's upcoming e-pharma acquisition, all of the latest funding news and more coming up right after this. All right, so first up in the news, the National Payments Corporation of India, that's the NPCI, has capped the volume of Unified Payments Interface transactions, that's UPI transactions, that can be made through third-party apps like Google Pay, Phone Pay, Amazon Pay, MobiKwik, and Cred at 30% of the total transactions made through UPI. Now, you might have noticed that I didn't mention Paytm or GeoPay on that list. And that's because these two companies hold banking licenses and don't fall under the category of third-party apps. And so as a result, Paytm and GeoPay won't have to abide by this rule. PhonePay and Google Pay, on the other hand, do fall under this third-party app category, which means that this new rule is very, very bad for them. Together, they hold more than 80% of the total UPI market share. Under this new rule, they're gonna have to lower their market shares to less than 30% by 2023. Now, you're welcome to disagree with me in the comments down below, but I personally think that this isn't going to be a positive thing for the growth of India's digital economy. Personally, I think that the more competition there is in this space, the better it's going to be for Indian people. And yes, PhonePay is owned by Walmart, Google Pay, of course, is owned by Google, Amazon Pay is owned by Amazon. But with so many players in this space, it actually forces each company to chase after every single new user. These mobile payments companies, at least until 2023, will have a financial incentive to grow their market share by chasing after new customers. But what happens when that financial incentive disappears, when your market share is capped? And also, what happens to us, not just the companies, but actually the customers? If I prefer to use PhonePay or I prefer to use Google Pay or, for example, Amazon Pay, what's gonna happen when my preferred third-party UPI app, whether it's Google Pay, PhonePay, Amazon Pay, MobiKwik, Cred, or any of the other third-party UPI apps is getting close to reaching that 30% market share cap? I honestly don't know. How is this going to be implemented? How is it going to be enforced in 2023 when these changes take place? If you have any ideas on how they might actually go about this, definitely let me know in a comment down below. And also, I'm just curious to know your thoughts on how this might affect India's digital economy. All right, next up in the news, up until this point, OTT streaming platforms, that's over-the-top streaming platforms like Netflix, Amazon Prime Video, Disney Plus Hotstar, Z5, Voot, Sony Live, and Altbology were self-regulated. They could pretty much publish any kind of content that they wanted. But it looks like the golden age of OTT streaming here in India is coming to a close. The Ministry of Information and Broadcasting is now going to be responsible for regulating policies for online streaming platforms and online news portals. Now, there's one thing that I wanted to point out here, something that I feel is worth mentioning. So far, no distinction has been made between OTT platforms which curate and publish their own content like Netflix, Amazon Prime Video, and Disney Plus Hotstar, and platforms like YouTube or Facebook, which act as intermediaries for content creators. So it is technically possible that platforms like Facebook and YouTube will face similar regulations from the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting as platforms like Netflix and Amazon Prime Video and Disney Plus Hotstar. And then we also have, and this is a direct quote from the government circular, news and current affairs content on online platforms, which I feel is extremely vague and could potentially even include Twitter, which is definitely a source of news for a lot of people. So this has left a lot of people wondering, what exactly are we talking about here? Are we talking about OTT platforms, or are we talking about the entire internet? Are we talking about Facebook and YouTube and Twitter along with Netflix and Amazon Prime Video and Disney Plus Hotstar? Would they all be regulated by the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting? If you have any ideas on what you think the government might be trying to do here, Definitely let me know in a comment down below, but let's focus in now on OTT platforms. A lot of people, myself included, love platforms like Netflix and Amazon Prime Video because they're self-regulated. They aren't censored. There aren't little things at the beginning of each movie or TV show that tell you about how bad smoking is for your health or drinking is for your health, and they're not cutting scenes because they're deemed to be inappropriate. If Netflix has made a movie or a TV show and you're subscribed to Netflix, you're gonna see that movie or TV show. But now with the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting being essentially in complete control over what these OTT platforms are able to publish on their platforms and what they aren't, there might be some movies or some TV shows which aren't published on these OTT platforms because the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting decides that they don't want Indian viewers to see those movies or TV shows. There might be some scenes that are cut or some things that are blurred because the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting doesn't want you to see those things. But in all honesty, I'm not really that surprised that this is happening. Over the last couple of years, these OTT platforms have definitely generated quite a bit of controversy for doing things like hurting religious sentiments and also showing content on their platforms which wasn't suitable for children and even for fully grown adults sometimes. And just as an example here, there's a popular Indian show on Netflix called Sacred Games, and there was a petition to remove one particular scene from that show because it allegedly defamed former Indian Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi. Another show called Layla generated quite a bit of outrage amongst Hindu people because they felt that they had been defamed by certain parts of the show. And even if we look outside of India for a second, there was a French Netflix film called Cuties, which several US senators wanted Netflix to remove from their platform, and they also wanted Netflix to be investigated for this movie for reasons that I can't even talk about in this video. I will let this image speak for itself here. It is definitely a provocative movie, to say the least. And so I wouldn't be surprised if the Indian government is deciding to regulate these OTT platforms so that people don't end up seeing this kind of content, these things that are upsetting to a lot of people and generate a lot of controversy and outrage. But I'm definitely curious to know what you guys think. Let me know in a comment down below. Is the Indian government taking things a step too far? Or is this something that needed to be done a long time ago? Maybe you feel that these OTT platforms self-regulating themselves just hasn't been working out. They've been crossing lines, they've been causing outrage, and they need to have someone who's coming in and overseeing everything like the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting. So we're gonna move on to the next news item in just a second, but before we do, I just wanted to thank all of you who tuned in for our live Q&A with Rishikesh Tatar. It was great to see that kind of turnout for one of our live streams, and you should know that from now on, our live streams are gonna be hosted on Friday evenings at 8 p.m. They're not always going to be Q&As with entrepreneurs. Sometimes it's just going to be Prithvi. But either way, I hope you guys will tune in for those future streams. And also, if you're not already subscribed to our channel, now would be a great time to do so. We post new videos every single week about Indian startups, entrepreneurs, and the latest news. Also, we post news items on Instagram every single day. And we also have a Discord server if you want to become a more active member of the Backstage with Millionaires community. You can find links to both of those along with everything else that we're going to be talking about in this video in the description down below. All right, next up in the news, and I'm sorry there's so much negative news this week, but cybersecurity firm Cyble has discovered BigBasket's database of users being sold online for 40,000 US dollars. That's 29.5 lakh rupees. This hacked database contains the data of around 20 million users, that's 2 crore users, and it contains information like full names, dates of birth, contact numbers, locations, and IP addresses. Now, this data breach has been confirmed by BigBasket, but one thing that wasn't stolen was crucial financial data. That means that credit card numbers, debit card numbers, and PINs are all safe. They weren't stolen during this breach. But BigBasket is actually far from being the only Indian startup that has faced a data breach this year. Earlier this year in May and July, Unacademy and Dunzo both faced security breaches which compromised the data of millions of their users. And then looking outside of the startup ecosystem, in the last month alone, Cyble has reported 6 different breaches, including IRCTC, Bharat Matrimony, and PM Narendra Modi's personal website. All right, next up in the news, Tata Group is currently in talks with online pharmacy startup 1mg to acquire a majority stake. Now, this piece of news is very closely connected to another piece of news that we talked about a couple of weeks back, where Tata Group is also in talks with BigBasket to acquire a majority stake in them as well. Tata Group is looking to launch their own super app by the end of this year. And so it makes a lot of sense that they would be quickly trying to acquire a bunch of different companies that would help them to strengthen this super app. But besides this super app, it also just looks like Tata Group is trying to keep up with the growth that we're seeing from Reliance Industries. Earlier this year, they launched JioMart, which Tata Group could be trying to counter with BigBasket. And then also earlier this year, Reliance acquired Netmeds, which Tata Group could be trying to counter with their potential acquisition of 1mg. All right, moving on to some funding news now. Reliance Retail has raised 9,555 crore rupees, that's $1.3 billion, from Saudi Arabia's Public Investment Fund for a 2.04% stake. With this investment, Reliance Retail has now raised a total of 47,260 crore rupees, that's $6.3 billion, from investors like TPG, GIC, Abu Dhabi Investment Authority, Mubadala, General Atlantic, Silver Lake, and KKR. Also, I think it's worth noting that these funds are coming at a time when Reliance Retail is in a legal struggle with Amazon over its deal to acquire the retail business of Future Group. So this investment could suggest that Reliance Retail's investors are fairly confident in Reliance Retail's ability to take care of this pretty quickly. All right, next up in the funding news, EV scooter startup Ather Energy has raised $35 million, that's 261.5 crore rupees, in its Series D round from Sachin Bansal and Hero MotoCorp. Founded by Tarun Mehta and Swapnil Jain in 2013, Ather Energy is building a line of smart electric scooters. Their most recent products are the Ather 450 and the Ather 450X. The startup is going to begin delivering Ather 450X scooters to its customers in Bengaluru and Chennai from next week. These fresh funds are going to help the company to speed up their deliveries and also accelerate their expansion plans. All right, that is all the startup news that I have for you guys this week. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, make sure to hit the like button and also hit subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode of Backstage with Millionaires. Happy Diwali to all of you, and I will see you in the next one.